one that wanted to come. What did you expect?
I changed my mind. I thought I'd get to see you beat up bad guys using your sonic boobs, pool balls, and KFC combos.
It's a prison. Why would I beat up the people we already captured? You little brat. Seriously, what am I going to do with you?
In the previous iteration of Parasoul's variant discussion, I described her with praise for being equipped with plenty of tools fit for the meta. Nowadays, however, it's fair to say that times are slowly but surely catching up to her. Don't get the wrong impression, by all accounts she's a more than capable character, much better equipped than the likes of Peacock or Big Band. But with the high demand in recovery, her presence has gradually diminished. Most of her moveset hits fairly hard, but doesn't feature outstanding effects, like increased crit rate, a short bleed on hit, etc. But there's very notable exceptions that elevate Parasoul's kit as a whole. The first one is her buff removal tool in Canopy Bounce, indispensable when it comes to ensuring faster kills, and with fair odds at that, and her bread and butter in both immunity and precision taunt. It works as an effective safety net against any incoming debuffs, such as scores and disable blockbusters, as well as an offensive tool for safe dispatching of certain defenders. It's highly advisable to max out the precision taunt to make the absolute most of it. In terms of marquee, you should always go for critical mass. Not only does it increase crit damage significantly with 5 tiers on the field, it's also much easier to invest in crit rate overall, which isn't a complete requirement with the precision taunt equipped. Not to mention, said taunt renders critical thinking obsolete for the most part. As for the prestige, it's serviceable, I guess. It's ultimately extra precision stacks while nearby tiers. While one could exclusively rely on Egret Call for precision, the addition of the prestige can serve as a passable contribution. At least it doesn't completely go to waste, but you could also ignore it if you wish. Ultimately, Parasoul can still function on the occasion, still carrying many positives that can be put to good use, but gradually her presence in the meta receded to some extent. One could get results regardless, but it's not reaching the heights of old anytime soon. Shelter can be best described as an excellent beginner's choice, carrying a notably strong ability for the early game, but quickly downfalls later on, as better options are made available. The extra crit rate for the whole team is a nice benefit, although more often than not it's better to just invest into set stat for a character. If nothing else, it works at least for experimentation, and if you don't really feel like further investing crit rate at the moment. And the enrages on crit are as basic as it gets, as well as the reason as to why she's good for beginners. Easy extra strength with little to no effort. But again, that's all she has to offer, and she gets beaten to it by many other choices.
Impersonating an officer is treason!
Ow! Heavy Rain is overlooked somewhat. It may be due to being a bronze, therefore low attack, and also because the palette itself is the least flattering out there. But we're not in a palette contest. Is the ability itself good? Actually, yeah, it has some resemblance to that of Neuromancer, or rather, Neuromancer copied her in retrospect. The main difference is that Heavy Rain actually has to land critical hits, and can't lazily go for blocked hits and keep the opponent on a perfect lock. There's a major factor that could be deemed as the key hindrance, the aforementioned low base attack, meaning if you choose to invest her, make that a priority to fix. So while not as fast as Neuromancer, Heavy Rain can still shine on the right hands.
Don't screw this one up, Egrets!
Ow! Shadow Ops got popular for being one of the few efficient cases against Final Fight Immortal Fiber and Blue Screen. Nowadays, new and easier alternatives have been released or discovered, such as Gravedigger, Stage Fright and High Ruler. By no means she's any less functional than before, but it's fair to say she's comparatively less practical because of the constant need to keep the opponent next to tiers in order to keep the curse inflicted. If you're good at holding them in the corner, then you can consistently have them cursed for most of the match. That being said, her low attack is her major weakness, so once again, equip her as well as possible if you actually consider her for a fight.
Haters gonna hate, booyah!
Ow! No Egrets is a strange one for me. For the longest time I heard she's half decent, but never got the hype behind her. Sure, disabling tag-ins, specials and blockbusters all at once is cool and all, but the length is measly 4 seconds. Enough to avoid getting bursted, yes, but it's still just kind of average. If the length really bothers you, I guess debuff extenders like Sunday School and Octoplasm may be of interest. Other than that she's fine, but just a full opponent controller and not much else. Not even for very long at that. You could consider her a decent beginner's option. I'd much rather advise Sheltered instead.
Where are my damn egrets?
Ivy League is essentially Diet Freeze Frame. She has the same slow and wither features implemented in her ability, but much worse in every aspect. For you need to drop tears for slow and detonate them for wither. Thankfully they don't have to hit the opponent, but it's still not the greatest payoff for detonation. And that's all she has to offer. An actually passable meter control that's ultimately overshadowed by the majority of the game's catalog, because they're capable of doing other things in the first place. And there's also little to no reason to ever use her outside of personal interest, I guess. So yeah, I wouldn't even bother with Ivy League.
Back to the pound, you filthy animal!
Princess Pride has one major asset that grants her considerable value for rifts: easy recovery. She gains regeneration by dropping tears and gains 6% health per tear detonated, 30% tops with 5 on the field. However, her low attack could make her less favorable than using Philia for example, but some cases can still show up where she can prove herself practical, such as Dreadlocks. This matchup may prompt some people to consider critless builds, but thanks to precision, it's not all that necessary. What is necessary will be attack investment. Not the biggest must-have out there, but she can be useful for the sake of scratching off a couple health points.
I'm gonna need a spa after this.
High Ruler is a strong contender for the current best Parasoul available at the moment. 2 words: Hex and Curse. She's one of the lucky few capable of inflicting both of them at the same time, and on a somewhat reliable fashion, that being tier detonation. That forces equipping napalm triggers somewhere, and maybe some extra tier moves. But it can make it worth it for the debuffs alone. These combined with Parasoul's kit can counter in theory the vast majority of Rift nodes. Her main downside comes in the form of, yet again, low attack. That makes her much less capable of tackling triple nodes and requiring significant investment or supports. As for her disabled debuffs and fatigue, they exist. It contributes to keep the opponent in check, but they're far from the focus. Easily a very desirable Parasoul that can pull through with the right skill.
You will refer to me only as your highness!
Regally Blonde was one of the lucky few to get a considerable buff to her abilities. It's too bad it was not enough to take off in a significant fashion. She's more defensively oriented than her past version. I'll give her credit for disabling specials, letting her ignore bursts rather easily offense-wise. But even then, it's nothing major. Defensively, she can do things. No doubt both disabled specials and autoblock are fairly annoying to deal with, but it's easy enough to counter. Either launch Regally in the air to negate the incoming autoblock, or backdash to set some distance and reset her counters. And that's not even acknowledging buffs, debuffs or whatever. The meter lowering is mildly annoying, but it's nothing impressive. She may give you some struggle on the rare occasion, but otherwise Regally Blonde will remain irrelevant for the most part. Unless Rift lunatics start using her against Immoral Fiber.
The only royal you are is a royal pain in my—
Alright, this is bound to piss someone off. Starcrust is just not good. I'll give her credit where it's due, she can deal pretty high damage. But her condition for it depends entirely on stun, a debuff that while Parasoul has access to in her kit, it usually has a short length. Not to mention this damage increase applies to blockbusters only. If you happen to not carry either Motor Brigade or Egret Dive for whatever reason, then thankfully Starcrust can stun enemies on her own, with a perfect block, and on a 50% basis. The perfect blocked aspect isn't too bad as long as you know how to bait the AI. It's the fact that it's tied to a coin toss, it makes it not reliable. And all for a damage increase that doesn't match the likes of Primed. But hey, bragging rights privilege I guess. You know, back in the day I heard people say she was about on par with Primed in terms of strength and usefulness. Primed is a basic but effective variant, capable of increasing her own damage for a while. She functions similar to Sheltered, only replacing critical hits over tier spawns. This can make her come across as slower, but the length of the enrages is longer to even out. She doesn't have that much secret, she hits hard and isn't too complex to use, albeit more limited on the Rift end due to her only call to action being a Parasoul that hits hard. I would like to say the bleeds on tier detonation are any effective, but unfortunately they have to land hits on the opponent, otherwise it won't work. I wish the devs brought back the old version. I'm pretty sure it's no longer that busted.
Go cry to your mummy!
Risky Ginger is one of those cases where it can be divisive whether she's good or not. She walks a similar path to that of Starcrossed, but replaces perfect blocks for dash intercepts. Not the easiest to dominate, since the AI could change its mind on what it will do. This is usually the main turnoff for using Risky, but to those skilled and determined enough to dominate it, does it have enough of a payoff? Yeah, for the most part. Landing intercepts not only grants you Timeless and Rage, but also inflicts Deathmark, making Risky one of the highest damaging Parasouls available on her own. Note that the Enrage is removed when blocking hits, so doing that is out of the question, especially when keeping in mind that blockbusters become unblockable with 3 Enrage stacks equipped. The level of overkill she can potentially achieve is high indeed, but the intercept condition is the primary obstacle one must adapt in order to make Risky Ginger excel. And if you're feeling lazy, just use Thrill and Inner Pieces alongside Risky.
It's like a truck! Ow!
This is the part where I would discuss Bombshell, but I already did that a while ago, so watch that instead. And also, OK Then God requested that I say Bombshell best Parasoul, which is of course a lie. Not because it's objectively wrong or anything, but because it comes from OK Then God. Them's the rules, bitch. I may have employed hyperbole in the past about Somersault, describing her as nothing short of perfect. HPS must have seen that and went absurdly degenerate with Unholy Host years later. Anyway, I'd say she remains overall a good variant, but unquestionably her H is beginning to show. She can consistently chip out opponents all while removing buffs, which is good to secure the win, but the pace of her buff removal is on the slow end. She also has the added convenience of removing her own debuffs all while gaining precision, by detonating 3 tiers minimum at once. It's more of an alternative playstyle to using immunity and precision taunt. Whichever you go may determine whether you prefer speed or efficiency. In many cases prefer the speed route, since it can be much better adapted to other Parasouls. If you get your hands on Somersault, she's still gonna make some matches easier, but I can't say she's as effective as she once was. Everything got faster. Simple as.
How sad for you.
Ow!
Back in your cage, dog!
Twat. Right. Okay.
Come on, you can say other things apart from swear words. Stop cursing and speaking French.
Fuck off, twat.